In 2019, Canelo Álvarez became the king of boxing. That was the year that the middleweight champion won a light heavyweight title. That was the year that the world had to recognize Canelo as being one of the greatest of all time. Lots of champions have won titles across multiple divisions. But what makes Canelo particularly impressive is that he did it around the middleweight division. This weight range is widely regarded as the toughest in the business. Just ask Canelo's old foe, Danny Jacobs.
Yeah, well, middleweight, you get the best of both worlds. You get the knockout power like the heavyweights have. You get those spectacular KOs. And you also get a little bit of athleticism, the speed, and the boxing IQ and finesse that the lightweight guys have. So the middleweight, to me, is the cream of the crop. That's why Sugar Ray Robinson would always be my favorite fighter, because he possessed a little bit of everything.
Sugar Ray Robinson, the cream of the crop. When people ask who the greatest of all time is, 90% of the time, the answer is this guy. This fact is important for Canelo, because not even the great Sugar Ray could achieve something Canelo did. What Sugar accomplished was remarkable. Between 1940 and 1965, he won 174 fights as a pro, with 19 losses, 6 draws, 2 no contests, and 109 wins by knockout. It's even more impressive when you break it down. From 1940 to 1951, his first 11 years, Sugar scored 129 wins with just 1 loss and 2 draws. By today's standards, that's absolutely bonkers. In Canelo's first 11 years, his record read just 48 wins, with 1 loss and 1 draw. The same amount of losses with 1 less draw, but with 81 less wins. Then there's Sugar's 1943 to 1951. Following his first professional loss, which came by way of the great raging bull Jake LaMotta, Robinson went on a 91-fight unbeaten streak, the 6th longest streak in boxing history. That's never going to be broken again. The Mexican's longest undefeated streak was a meager 43 by comparison. So he doesn't outshine Sugar Ray there either. So where does Canelo outdo the GOAT? In 1952, when Sugar was the middleweight champ, he moved up to take on the light heavyweight champion Joey Maxim at Yankee Stadium. Recorded temperatures hit 103 degrees Fahrenheit or 39 degrees Celsius. It was a hellish nightmare. Midway through the bout, they had to change referees due to the heat. After 13 rounds, Robinson was ahead on the cards, but he collapsed from heat exhaustion, and Maxim was declared the winner. The loss was the only stoppage of Sugar's career, and he never challenged for the light heavyweight title again. In 2019, when Canelo was the middleweight champ, he moved up to take on the light heavyweight champ Sergey Kovalev. There had only been 5 fighters in history who had been able to move from middleweight up to light heavyweight and win a world title, and Canelo knocked Kovalev out in the 11th round. For everything Sugar Ray achieved, he never won a light heavyweight title. The same can't be said for the great Canelo Álvarez.
Canelo Álvarez is arguably the best middleweight boxer of his generation. He never lost at that weight, and he beat just about every big name in the division. But the middleweight division is one of the most stacked in history, and that has us wondering how he'd compete against some of the best 160-pounders of all time. In 1908, Stanley Ketchel was the middleweight champion, and if you thought Canelo was impressive for taking on light heavyweights, then you need to know the Michigan Assassin. How good was Ketchel? How vicious and brutal is probably a better question. But without ever having any formal training, Ketchel was so good, he took on the heavyweight champ, Jack Johnson. The Galveston Giant was the greatest heavyweight anyone had ever seen, bar none. The idea that Ketchel, who was 6 inches shorter, could take on the Giant seemed ridiculous. But Ketchel did just that, and then some. In the 12th round, Ketchel surprised Johnson with a right hand that floored him. Johnson got back up to knock Ketchel out, but he had to hit him so hard that Ketchel's teeth got stuck in Johnson's gloves. And Ketchel still got up. Can you imagine Canelo putting any of the current heavyweight champs on the canvas? Especially when he couldn't make a mark on the light heavyweight champ, Dimitri Bivol? I don't think so. That was over 100 years ago, though, and the game has advanced significantly since then. You might give Canelo the advantage over Ketchel just via technique and training, but he'd have to go through hell to get the win. Moving forward through history, Canelo would run into the best boxer of all time, Sugar Ray Robinson, and his arch-nemesis, Jake LaMotta. And watching the Mexican take on either of these legends of the 1940s and 50s would be an absolute treat. With LaMotta, you don't get a movie called Raging Bull made about your life without good reason. Outside of the ring, LaMotta was a real problem for anyone and everyone around him. But inside the ring, LaMotta was a man possessed, a constant, forward-moving pressure fighter with stamina for days and a burning fury to hurt people. LaMotta was so filled with rage that he was willing to take ferocious beatings. If that gave him a chance to beat his opponent even more than they could beat him. It was at times horrific to watch, but it was almost always more horrific for his opponents. Against Canelo, it's hard to see LaMotta winning, simply because of how much longer and stronger Canelo is and how long LaMotta would have to stand within Canelo's devastating punching range. But it's hard to see Canelo putting LaMotta away in 12 rounds, when barely anyone could put him away even when they went 15. That's especially true when not even Sugar Ray Robinson could make LaMotta quit, because Sugar Ray Robinson is arguably the most gifted fighter to ever lace up a glove. Unlike Ketchel and LaMotta, who were just violent whirlwinds of anger, Robinson had it all: speed, accuracy, footwork, ring IQ, and shot selection. But like Ketchel and LaMotta, Sugar also possessed aggression and power. He had everything you could want in a boxer, and he's the reason they invented the term pound for pound. They simply didn't have a way to describe how good he was. Like Canelo, Robinson moved up and challenged for the light heavyweight title, and he came up short too. But that's not why Canelo has a chance at beating Robinson. Sugar Ray was undoubtedly best at welterweight and not middleweight. While he won the middleweight title on multiple occasions, he also lost it on multiple occasions too. You can't say the same for Canelo. But the person who might be the best matchup for Álvarez, at least for the fans, is Carlos Monzon, because this would be a bout between one of the most polished fighters in Canelo and one of the nastiest in Escopeta. Monzon was taller, Monzon was longer, and Monzon's jab was better. He had one of the best and most effective jabs boxing has ever seen. And then there was his right hand. While it wasn't anything flashy and it wasn't outrageously powerful, he combined it perfectly with that constant, quick, and malicious jab. His 1-2 combination hurt men over and over again. You don't believe me? Canelo went 44 fights before suffering his first loss, to the great Floyd Mayweather, no less. It was a remarkable streak that made everyone take notice of just how good the Mexican could be. Monzon, however, went undefeated in his final 80 fights. He won the title in 1970 and retired with the title in 1977, 7 years later, with more consecutive defenses than Canelo will ever dream of. Watching Canelo test his legendary defense and counterpunching against arguably the best jab cross combination in boxing history would be a remarkable sight, to say the least. After Monzon, there was a golden age of middleweight monsters in the 80s, with the rise of the Four Kings: Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns, and Roberto Duran and marvelous Marvin Hagler. They were four of the very best, and they gave each other hell. But with Leonard, Hearns, and Duran constantly moving up and down weights, it's hard to say they were middleweights. Marvelous Marvin, however, ruled as the undisputed champion for almost 7 years, a fearsome switch hitter with the highest knockout ratio of the division's undisputed champs. He only went down once in his pro career, and he still won that bout. Canelo versus Hagler would be a bout between two master technicians, but Canelo may have the edge. In his second bout with the power-hitting and ever-durable Gennady Golovkin, who, like Hagler, was known for knocking men down and not going down, it was Canelo who got the decision. But if you wanted to see Canelo test his mettle against someone from the modern era, How about Bernard Hopkins? While Canelo had dropped a few fights before he turned 31, B-Hop didn't really start losing until he was 40, and his record against high-quality opponents leaves Álvarez in the dust. This guy went 24 rounds with Roy Jones Jr., who was the pound-for-pound king when Floyd Mayweather was in his prime, and Hopkins outpointed Jones in the rematch. Even better, Hopkins is the first guy to unify all 4 belts in a division, and he did it in the middleweight division by stopping the legend Oscar de la Hoya when Hopkins was 39. Canelo unified all 4 belts at super middleweight because he couldn't get the job done in the middleweight division when he took on his longtime rival Golovkin the first time they met. And if Canelo had his work cut out getting his hands on Triple G, he might have found getting his hands on the ever-wily, dirty boxer B-Hop even harder. Canelo Álvarez might not be the best middleweight in history, but you can bet he'd give every single other man vying for the title a run for their money. And that's about as good as you can get with fantasy fight matchups.
Thanks for watching. And remember, if you want more fight sports in your life, just hit the subscribe button.